Portal Collection is just £13.49 on the Nintendo Switch, but how does it perform? What's it like in co-op mode? Does the split screen work? What's the frame rate like? And yeah, is it worth you picking it up if you've never played it before, or double dipping if you played it back in the day? Hopefully this video will answer all of those questions. My name's Mark Walker, welcome back to SwitchUp, and do stick around if you're interested in reviews of games like Monster Hunter Rise, Sunbreak, and let me know what you thought of that mini direct. I think it was surprisingly good. Maybe they just stripped it down after all the rumours and stuff, but yeah, having the Persona games is brilliant news, and that Live Alive demo looks great, with saves that carry across to the full game. Happy days. But for now, let's have a look at the performance of Portal. Was this a triumph? And is the game still alive? Or will it be hard to overstate my disappointment? Well, let's find out.
Appreciated and required. There might even be cake.
Let's first jump into Portal 1 then. And as mentioned right at the start there, both of these can be had for just £13.49. And while yes, they've been out on other platforms and they can be had relatively cheaply, it does feel a bit like Valve looking at some of the other releases we've seen of older games and saying, why have you charged that much? £13.49 is absolutely on the money, and despite their age, you're getting two of the best first-person puzzle action games that there are available. This companion collection also has developer commentary, online multiplayer, split screen, and a reasonable download size, which I'll put on the screen. The online play will require a Nintendo Online subscription, so make sure you've got that set up if that's what you're after. On to performance. The frame rates for both games are targeting a locked out 60 frames per second, which is fantastic, and Valve's Source Engine holds up reasonably well. Portal 1 seems to have no issues with that 60 FPS. It's running at native resolution in both docked and handheld modes, and image quality is, well, it's reflective of its time really. Although the engine saw a lot of tweaks with the sequel and subsequent releases, it looks pretty dated. With that said, the Portal engine still looks quite cool. There's something about staring into infinity that feels vaguely familiar. Everyone looks at their backlogs. And that 60 frames per second target is maintained in 99% of Portal 1. It does, however, have that general washed out look due to having less lighting effects than some of the later games. The age of the game is reflected in its textures, although its overall image quality isn't bad at all. Because the environments are relatively small and they have that uniform art style with a minimalist and relatively clean look, it's more functional than pretty. Now, when we jump over to the sequel, things look drastically different.
That is not a docking station. So there's one mystery solved.
Inside your head.
This one arrived 4 years after the original, and the Source Engine had seen a number of upgrades. Once again, it's targeting 60 frames per second in both docked and handheld modes, and this is less consistent than the first game. While there we see almost perfect frame pacing, in the earlier areas, Portal 2 has some frame pacing issues. It seems to hitch a little when you load into new areas when entering a portal, but again I found this smoothed out an hour or so into the game. And with the run down, more dystopian future look, with the overgrown vegetation, more dynamic shadows, more lighting, better textures, the Source Engine holds up remarkably well in this instance. Hopping over to handheld is the same again. It just plays and runs so well in handheld. The final element then would be the split screen. Now thankfully my daughter was willing to try the game out, and together we played through. Straight away I can see this is running at 30 frames per second, which is understandable, but there was nary a hitch and nary a stutter. It still looks decent, and you can choose whether to split the screen horizontally or vertically. She'd never used motion controls, so you'll have to forgive the occasional flailing. On the subject of controls then, as you can see, there are motion control implementations, which for first-person shooters or first-person puzzle games like this, in my opinion at least, it makes it much easier. It's entirely optional, you don't have to use it, but for those like myself that enjoy it, it is here, and you can tweak the sensitivities of absolutely everything, change your axis, and tailor the game to the way that you like to play. Load times tended to be in the 7 to 12 second range. There's no issue there at all, and it's quick to get in and out of games. Now, one issue I have experienced seems to be related to the network. It seems like the game checks if you're online. I say this because although I've had perfect internet connection, it keeps popping up with a "you're not connected to the network," one of those really annoying intrusive boxes, and it's happened multiple times. Now, In fairness, the internet in my office is absolutely dire, so it could be related to that, but the fact that it detects it and feels the need to give you that message, it's a pain in the bum. I don't know how it would work if you were out and about. Maybe you'd need to tether to your phone. You can still play without the internet, but yeah, it's going to tell you about it, which is a bit silly in my opinion. As far as the gameplay holding up then in both 1 and 2, the first title introduced the concept of the portal-based gameplay, and it was essentially a sequel of sorts, or at least a spiritual successor, according to Wikipedia, of a 2005 indie game called Narbacular Drop. Never heard of it, never played it, but I can see the similarities. When I first played this, it didn't particularly stress out my GeForce 3, so I'm not surprised that it runs well enough on the Switch, but it's all about the gameplay. Placing one of 2 portals which link together in the world allows you to solve a number of puzzles. The puzzles are physics-based, and they also carry over the momentum of the player. This then allowed you to use your linear momentum to solve those puzzles, and much of this will firing blocks through portals, jumping through yourself, with the sequel taking things a step further both visually and in terms of that gameplay. And it's one of those experiences that makes you feel much smarter than you are. A problem that initially feels insurmountable will quickly become evident as you experiment, and much of it is through experimentation, but it's the expert design which facilitates this. The Portal games feature no health, although you can die, sometimes through physics-based objects colliding with you, or gun turrets and other such hazards. There are challenge maps to work through once you've completed the game, and a more complex advanced mode once you finish. Now, contrary to appearances, there's actually a decent narrative.
On the other side of that wall is one of the old testing tracks. There's a piece of equipment in there that we're going to need to get out of here.
Your specimen has been processed, and we are now ready to begin the test proper.
It features an AI called GLaDOS, who, without spoiling too much, has one of the greatest songs of all time, and it's GLaDOS, voiced by Ella McLean, who will guide you through the adventure. But it's the sequel, with the introduction of Stephen Merchant, who voices the AI companion, where the developers hit their comic stride. Merchant, by his very nature, is an excellent writer, but it's his deadpan delivery and Brentisms which really struck home.
Are you going to open that? Ah! Oh, God. You look good. Looking good, actually.
Overall then, the games are certainly old, but they have aged brilliantly. Playing these on the Nintendo Switch at 60 frames per second for a very reasonable price, and with only a few minor issues related to the network on the sequel, you won't be disappointed if you pick them up, but they've certainly pitched it within impulse buy territory. Let me know in the comments if there's anything I've missed out. Normally I'd comment on things like text size, but it's a game that generally narrates what you need to know. And do let me know in the comments what you thought of that mini direct. And if you want to make any purchases, make sure you use code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg when you buy your eShop vouchers to save 10%. Alright, I've got some monsters to hunt. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch Up. Cheers guys, see ya!